Doug Gottlieb from CBS Sports, kind enough to join us throughout the tournament, did a great job, and said something at halftime that I hope people remember. Because at the time, you had foul trouble with Trey Burke. He sat a lot. And Spike Albrecht played great, played out of his mind in the first half. And it overshadowed, I think, that foul trouble and Trey Burke sitting on the bench. But what Doug said is, I still would have had Trey Burke in there. And he said that at halftime. And he joins us now. I thought it came back to be prophetic because you had Spike who got gassed. I thought he was extremely winded playing all those minutes first half, Doug.
Yeah, and, he's still a freshman. And, he's still a guy who averages 1.9 points a game for a reason. And I didn't think you necessarily have to take him out. They played him together in the second half. Just the idea generally in coaching is, and I think John Beeline would tell you this today, usually you play out the run with a guy. And then you get the big boys back in. And I think he just tried to buy a couple extra minutes. And, a couple of those jump shots, he got humming. He got going early, and they left him open. And now all of a sudden, he gets a wide open one at the top of the key. He hits three in a row, and then he's driving at Tim Henderson because he's got a walk-on on him. They kind of hid also that they started to break down defensively. And obviously, just kind of he and Hancock end up matching each other. But what happened late in that first half was there were three straight what you called empty possessions, where you don't really get a good look. One, Mitch McGarry goes kind of one-on-one and just throws up a shot. And then there was one where Spike had a bad turnover. And he just felt like at that time, and this is what Greg Anthony are sitting there saying, it's not that it's a big guy, because big guys pick up fouls, It's a point guard. Put Trey back in there. You don't even have to take Spike out if you feel like he's running a fever. But get him back in there and stabilize things, especially after Hancock hit the first. Let me just say this, Dan. I know you've been to a ton of Final Fours covering it. I've been to, I think, 15. I've never seen anything like last night. The crowd was incredible. Now, part of it was the game was, like you said, Albrecht and then Hancock and then the speed and attentiveness of the Louisville defense, and like Michigan came to play. So the play was really, really good, but the crowd was amazing. That's a 75,000 person, auditorium essentially, but it was humming like a high school building. It was really something special, and I think that sapped Michigan a little bit to where, they get this big lead and they're bouncing up and down, but Louisville just keeps coming.
Well, I thought that the crowd appreciate the entertainment value because you're not used to seeing two coaches who let their teams play in accordance to their talent level. And you saw that where everybody thought Michigan was going to slow it down against Louisville. I said, first of all, try that. Let me know how that works. Second of all, if you break the press, make them pay. And I thought that's where you got, these two, they were sort of opposites with a great defense and a great offense. And at times I couldn't tell the difference, who was the better defense and the better offense. It was just fun for a change to see that. And I thought that it was a great exclamation point for the tournament that I thought, up until that point was nondescript. It was Kevin Ware and it was Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah. Now, listen, we had bad, like Sweet 16 weekend was not a great weekend. It just wasn't. We had the Kevin Ware storyline. But not a ton of great games, with the exception of the Kansas-Michigan game. But those were three tremendous games. 3 games. Think about Louisville. Now, Louisville, I marvel at a couple of things. Trey Burke's a really good player, but Peyton Siva and Russ Smith, and Russ wasn't very good last night, but when the ball goes through the hoop, they pick him up. Full court. That's like a drill you do when you're just starting the season, full court man-to-man defense, and to pressure a player that of that caliber and contain him while pressuring him, their defense is remarkable. But then something you just pointed out, Louisville's offense got really good in the second half.
Yeah.
They tinkered with some things. They changed their lineup. He sat Russ Smith. He goes inside to Shane Bohannon. And, the guy who's not getting enough credit is Zhang. Zhang was spectacular. He had 2 big post-up moves. He had one time when they left him at the top of the key. He had a wide-open jump shot. He's a very good passer. And then a lot like Anthony Davis last year, the way they played pick-and-roll defense. So Trey Burke comes off a pick-and-roll, and they just switched. So you got a 6'11" center who's able to stay enough in front of Trey Burke. Trey Burke, he made one jump shot over him, but he couldn't drive around him, and so their offense became very, very stagnant. And it allowed Louisville to kind of get some momentum offensively, get Peyton Siva driving, get Shane Bohannon on the boards, and then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that was as poorly officiated a big-time game as I've ever seen. It's not that it was a loose whistle, and loose whistles always favor Louisville, but because they foul on every play, and they'll even tell you they foul on every play. But they missed a goaltend. The block that Trey Burke had was a perfect block and a big momentum change. It was a 3-point game.
But see, here's that. You know what, Doug? That's something that where somebody benefits from sliding in to take the charge on Trish in the Syracuse game, but then you actually have a great defensive play, and what do? We whistle a foul on the guy who has the block. Yeah, that's what drives me crazy about this. Something that's a great defensive play, they blow it, and then you get a cheap little slide across, and you take the charge on Trish. I thought a lot of the calls went against Michigan last night.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you allow it to be a brawl, Louisville's going to win every time. And they slap and they hold and Shane Bohannon was just a beast on the boards. I mean, there was one possession there where I don't know if he fouled them or they fouled him, but there were several badly missed calls. Levert got a rebound at the end and he stepped out of bounds. So he stepped out of bounds because Shane Bohannon went over the back of Trey Burke, who had a perfect box out. They didn't reward some of the good things that Michigan did, but it was more just obvious calls that were missed. I was really disappointed. And I like John Cow. I thought he's a good, solid ref. Tony Green anticipated that block. John Higgins usually refs a tighter game. I didn't think they did a good job as a crew. I thought that was a bad night for them.
John Beilein, what did he do wrong in the second half, if you're going to point out one or two things?
Well, I mean, he could have. The only thing you could have done is maybe gone to two big guys, what they had done sometimes, in order to guard Bohannon. I mean, that's been their weak spot, the power forward spot. They stopped really moving the ball. He didn't use Nick Stauskas at all in that second half. We couldn't find him, and they just didn't have. It didn't feel like they had enough guys to spread out and spread the ball to. But I think a lot of it was Louisville, to be completely candid with you. That Louisville just figured out, hey, we're just going to switch all these high ball screens, and that's what Trey Burke is going to run. There was a two-possession run there where Hardaway got that nasty dunk, and he had scored in the post, and then he misses two pull-up jump shots in a row. So yeah. I don't know. The end of the game he kind of butchered, where he took McGarry out of the game and left Burke in the game, and he was unaware that they weren't in the bonus, and they waited too long to foul. But I don't think that cost him the game as much as I do think that when you're up 12 and Luke Hancock hits a three, right then you call a timeout, right then you get the National Player of the Year, who's your point guard, back in the game, and you stabilize things. Again, I don't know if they would have won it, but they completely lost momentum. And so even though they outplayed Louisville in the first half, they run in the locker room and they look up and they're up just 1 point.
Yeah, I thought it was deflating for them that they survived with Burke on the bench and Spike Albrecht playing, like an All-American there. And then you look up and you go, that's as good as, that's all we have is sort of the end result. And I also thought Pitino understands sort of that ebb and flow of a game, of when to push, when to back off, substitutions. I thought that Pitino called a great game last night.
He did. He really did. And the other thing is that I'm a big body language guy, and I hated to come out of games. I hated it. And you watch their guys, and he runs them in and out, in and out. I mean, Russ Smith doesn't start the second half, but then he runs them back in like a minute into it. None of his guys, when he takes them out, and I know it's the Final Four, so maybe it's a little bit different. None of them pout. They don't go into pout mode. They just keep playing, keep getting after it. And, Bohannon, barely touched the ball in the first half. Yeah. Second half, he just played his own game. So the guy is amazing. Think about that he gave up Camelot. I mean, how many championships would they have won? He gift-wrapped a national championship for Tubby Smith. Here, Tubby, take a national championship. I'm going to go back to the NBA. And then you go back to 2009, the Karen Cyphers deal. They'd lost in the first weekend, two seasons in a row. And then Calipari's killing it down the street. So you think maybe he's going to retire. I mean, remember he did I was at ESPN. He came to the ESPN for a weekend. Then he went and did CBS for a weekend. I'm like, he's going to get into TV. And he said he loved this young recruiting class he had. These aren't really – his two most heavily recruited kids are Siva and Bohannon, but it's just a really good team, and they epitomize what he pounds into them. Defense, incredible conditioning. They don't get tired. And, then he got bailed out by Tim Henderson against Wichita State and Luke Hancock in the national championship game.
Great stuff. We appreciate you joining us throughout the tournament. Do you see the favorite to win it all next year, according to Vegas?
I did not.
Kentucky.
Well, it's like I told Charles. I said, hey, Charles, it's just like the state of Alabama. All the championships are within, one state border. I said, for now, Charles. And you know what Charles said? It's not what you think. It's what you can prove. It's a good point from Charles.
Good to visit with you, Doug. Thank you.
Love you, Dan.
All right. Doug Gottlieb, CBS Sports.